Peter's one of our most amazing volunteers. Okay, let's see. Wow, I've never been this tall in my life. This is kind of nice. Good morning, everyone. As Sandra said, I'm Paula. I'm the executive director of St. Vincent's House, and so happy to be back here. It's so interesting that your theme for the month is welcome, because that's how I always feel when I come here. I feel so welcome walking through your beautiful garden and looking at your flowers, and then all the smiles and hugs that I get when I'm here. And as everything traditional to me, as everybody knows me, what a long title I have. The gift of welcome through service, how hope and healing starts with the perspective through service. And Sandra really kind of kicked it off nicely. As any good speaker does, I have to define, right? Doesn't everybody define what words mean? So I had to look up the actual definition of the word welcome, and it's an adjective. It basically says to be received with pleasure and hospitality into someone's home. But because I am who I am, I'm going to add into someone's heart as well, because I feel like that's where you really feel that welcome, is once somebody's in your heart. It's giving pleasure, satisfaction, being agreeable or gratifying, cordially or willingly permitted or invited. As I look through and I see Hebrews 13:2 says God expects us to show hospitality to strangers because you do not know when the angel of the Lord will visit you. I feel like sometimes we get really busy, right? Our life gets really busy, and we've got, especially now, I don't know if Zoom has helped or not, because now in the old days, pre-Zoom, I could maybe do like 4 meetings a day. Now with Zoom, I can have as many as 10 meetings a day. That's a lot of meetings, right? And you kind of lose that thing. And then with Zoom, I can also multitask. But now when I have to meet in person, I have to look and I have to, pay attention and things like that. But it's difficult to find the time to welcome strangers into our home, much less our hearts. We become so focused on ourselves that we forget about others. And I think that's so important, especially in the work that we do at St. Vincent's House. What Sandra was talking about is we offer what's called snack packs to our unsheltered. Anybody that is unsheltered can come to St. Vincent's House any day and get a snack pack in addition to the many families that we serve. I think if there's one thing that I want to impart in you is how important it is to acknowledge our friends that are unsheltered or that live in the streets. It's an uncomfortable situation, and trust me, I understand. I'll give you a perfect example is I was driving into work, and of course it was one of those mornings. I had a white shirt. How daring of me. I spilled coffee on it. I had to go back home, change shirts. I was running late for one of my 13 meetings that I had. I'm racing up in the elevator, and this young woman gets in the elevator with me. And I'm thinking about, I got to do this, this, and this. And I take a moment, and I look at her, and I can tell that she's not okay. So I ask her, "Are you okay?" And she breaks down and just starts telling me she's about to be evicted. And it's about 7:45. Usually our case managers get in at 8, but they don't start seeing clients till 9. And so I could tell she had a story to share. So I told her to have a seat in the lobby, get the application started. And I went over to Amber, who is our lead case manager. So we have amazing, talented staff. I mean, they are truly, truly angels. And I go over to Amber and I say, "I need you to sit down and talk to her. Something is really going on with her. She needs us." And so Amber brings her back immediately, and they start talking, and I'm in the back making some copies, and Amber comes over and she is just in tears, as we are many times with our client. She was a vet who had gone through a lot of really hard times. Her husband had passed away. She got laid off, and she had a young daughter, and she was about to be evicted from her home. And the thing is, she was in training to be a claims adjuster with Allstate, but she was beyond desperation in that she thought everything was going to be okay, but how it worked out is she wasn't going to get her first check for 15 days, and she was going to go to eviction court. And so I went over to her, and Amber went over to her, and I hugged her, and I told her, we got you. You will be okay. You will be okay. I promise you, you will be okay. Amber made a couple calls and was able to stop that eviction. But that is one of the many stories that we work with at St. Vincent's House. And so that's what I'm talking about, making that time to open your heart to listen. And when we look at service, what does service mean? Again, another description. It's a noun. It's to act or help in assistance. To do something by a person, it's a means of service. And I truly believe when you go to St. Vincent's House, you see hope everywhere, right? And just yesterday, I had a staff meeting with the team because we have to remember that people that we are looking to give hope to come into St. Vincent's House, very much the opposite of hope. When I look at hope, and again, the definition of hope is a desire, it's a wish, and it's an expectation, a dream, a daydream, a feeling of trust. And what I love about hope is never something that is static or passive. It's active, dynamic, directive, intentional, or life-sustaining. That's really powerful. And when you try to think of yourself without hope. What is that? What does that look like? Basically, at that point, and I don't want to be a downer, but this is the reality, right? The sinking feeling of hopelessness is the most challenging feeling that we encounter in our life because it taints everything that we see. We don't see things with a rosy lens. We see it with a very dark, dark lens. And many times, that's the people that we work with. I will tell you, just last month, we saw over 10,000 households in our pantry. Households looking for food. And if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, foods are things that we take for granted. Food is the most basic of all. So we know if our families need food, they're not taking care of their medical care, right? You're not worried that your blood pressure is really high. You're not worried that your blood sugar is through the roof because you're just taking care. If your kids are hungry, you're going to be concerned about that. Or also if you're afraid to be evicted. The clients that we're serving today is a very different client than what we saw during COVID. We are now working with our lower middle class and our middle class. Things have just gotten so hard and so expensive. And for our seniors, we went through, I sit down with all of our case managers and we go through all of the clients that we're working with. So many sweet seniors that have worked their whole lives on a fixed income that are making the decision, do I eat? Do I fulfill my prescriptions? And rent is just going up. Pre-COVID, we paid average rents of $600 a month. Now, for a one-bedroom, it's hard to find anything under $1,000, under $1,200. We have a list of landlords that we work with, and it's called affordable housing. 2 bedrooms for $1,600. That's just crazy, but that's what we're living with right now. And so there's a lot of people, 85% of the clients we're working with right now have never in their life asked for help. They have no idea how to do this. Every day, like Sandra was saying, we have people figuring out how to get to us because they need help. And at St. Vincent's House, we're so blessed that in addition to this huge pantry, we are actually the largest social service agency in Galveston County now. Our pantry is the largest distributing pantry in Galveston County. I think last year, it's just huge numbers. It's over 1 million pounds of food, hygiene supplies, and cleaning supplies, because whatever you need in your home, our families need as well. So in addition to food, we have, and we've just partnered with the Galveston Diaper Bank, so that is part of our integrated services. We have adult, and we have adult incontinence supplies, as well as baby diapers. We have shampoo, laundry detergent, cleaning supplies, toothbrushes, toothpaste. Like I said, anything that you might need in your home, we offer in our pantry. In addition to that, we do 150 homebound deliveries every week. That is people that cannot drive. It may be our seniors, or it may be people that are disabled, or it may be families that don't have a car or transportation. So we bring this important life-saving food to them in their home. And sometimes our volunteers are the only people that our clients see. I got really emotional because two of our volunteers, they were loading up the car with the boxes and they had some balloons. And I'm like, who's that for? And they're like, oh, it's Mr. X's, I can't say his name, but it's Mr. X's 70th birthday today. So they bring them, cupcakes or balloons, and they celebrate with them. And if they haven't heard from them, they let us know, and we check on them. This is why it's so important of this service that we get. We could not do what we do at St. Vincent's House without the amazing volunteers that we have. And I truly believe that when you give of this service, there's nothing that is more healing to you personally. There's studies that are done that the brain of a volunteer is very different than the brain of a non-volunteer. Most volunteers, and I love your affirmation and what it talks about, it's a different type of person that is a volunteer, a person that has a service mission, because they know, yes, they're giving of themselves, but they also know, and as I hear from many of my volunteers when I thank them, is they tell me all the time, Paula, I get so much more than I give. And so that really is truly something that is so giving. In addition to the food services that we have, Sandra mentioned clinics. We have 22 clinics with UTMB. We have grown so much, and they are complex clinic. Everything from a congestive heart failure clinic. We have a clinic when are vulnerable, and that's a word that we use now. I don't use the word poverty, because truly, I believe all of us are vulnerable. We're vulnerable in so many ways. It's just depending on how that vulnerability affects us. There's mental health as a vulnerability. There's income status as a vulnerability, which all of us are. It just is a different number of checks makes that vulnerability. It's abuse vulnerability. I mean, there's a lot of vulnerability out there. But in this transition to home clinic, it's where our vulnerable are being discharged from the hospital. And they don't have a nice home to come to. They don't have somebody waiting to cook their meals. They don't have somebody. And we all know we get, and I can say this, I'm a prior hospital administrator. We get discharged from the hospital way probably before we're ready. And healthcare depends on family members or others to rally around and help that continuum of care. Not all of us are as blessed to have this. So we have a whole clinic that helps, a team that helps ensure that when somebody is vulnerable, that they have some of these resources. We make sure that they have their prescriptions, that they have food. If we can stabilize housing, we'll do that. We'll have our case managers check in on them. But like I said, it's tremendous work. In addition to that, we have these partnerships with Family Service Center. So at St. Vincent's House, we have mental health counseling. Imagine the anxiety and depression that we have been going through, since COVID. Now, we're in hurricane, I just won't even go on and on about all the issues. But imagine if you were at that heightened vulnerability, how your anxiety and depression must be. So we have full-time mental health counselors that are available for same-day appointment. They're superheroes. I mean, they are really changing lives. And in addition to that, we have immigration attorneys. So what we do is we really look to partner and collaborate so that we can offer what we call this integrated care. Like I always say, you can't be well if you don't have food or shelter. That's why we have our huge pantry. You can't be well if your blood pressure or blood sugar are so high that you're so sick. That's why we have this collaboration with UTMB and our many clinics. And we're always looking at new things and new ways to be able to take care. We're a main training site now for all of the UTMB students. So any health profession will come through St. Vincent's House now as part of their core curriculum. OT, PT, nursing, nurse practitioners, phlebotomy, radiology, they all come through, medical students. So that's why we get to do such amazing God-saving work. And then that's what it is. We want to be a beacon of hope and healing for all of God's people at St. Vincent's House. It's really, really important to just do something. There's this song that I love, and I always say it. I realized I say this when I go out into the community, but I said it yesterday to my staff, and they're the ones that are truly doing something. And it said, I woke up this morning and saw a world full of trouble now. Thought, how did we ever get so down? How's this ever going to turn around? So I turned my eyes to heaven and I thought, God, why don't you just do something? I just couldn't bear the thought of children living in poverty, people living in slavery. The thought disgusted me, so I shook my fist at heaven and said, God, why don't you do something? And he said, I did. I created you. So that is truly the reason of purpose, or service, or hope, or healing. It all comes together. And so you ask, how can you help us at St. Vincent's House? First, keep us in your hearts. The work we do is very hard, but it is life-changing. I will say that of everything I've ever done in my whole life, I'm probably the happiest I am professionally. I have this saying on the back of my door that's, oh my gosh, remember Inger Hart? She did all those cartoons. Yes, thank you. And she's the princess and queen of everything. So she married Mingle Engelbright, right? And it says, to do something and to know it makes a difference, what could be better. And that's truly what happens. So please keep the staff, our volunteers, and our clients, our sweet, sweet clients, in your hearts and in your prayers every day. Share the work of what we do at St. Vincent's House. I really try to go out and help people understand what happens, but I think that when they come through, they're really blown away by the complexity of what happens every day. So help us share the word of what happens at St. Vincent's House. We couldn't do what we do without you. If you're interested, I know you guys are such amazing donators. We just gotta, where does Shirley go? I don't have my glasses. There you are. We just had an amazing check presentation last week. That is over 900 snack packs that we can purchase. 900 people that we can feed with your act of compassion that you gave us. So that is truly, truly thanked by us and everyone. Other things that you can do if you're interested is a hygiene supply. We cannot keep and just at the dollar store, right? You don't have to spend the $12, $13. I'd rather have 12 $1, actually they're $1.25 now, of the smaller laundry detergents and shampoo and deodorant and things for babies. We have so many babies that come through our pantry, just so many families living in their car. But I'm happy to say that this year we've been able to house probably 32 families. That's been a big, big deal for us. Everyone is an absolute victory. We still have a long way to go, but we work on it. If you can volunteer weekly, we need volunteers in our pantry, everything from stocking our shelves. We get deliveries from the Galveston County Food Bank twice a week. And even then, it doesn't stay on our shelves fast enough. If you can imagine 10,000 duplicated families in 1 month, how quickly that goes through. And we're pretty organized in the pantry. They do it well. In addition to that, right now we have almost 800 in Galveston that have identified as unsheltered. They have self-identified. That has gone up from 2022 that we had 340. So our numbers are getting larger. And sadly, I don't think that that's going to go away anytime soon. The other area that we couldn't do with our volunteers are homebound deliveries. That's tough work. That is lifting very heavy boxes. But if you've got a grandchild, that is the best way. I always say, when our kiddos come through the pantry and serve, that is life-changing for them. That truly is amazing perspective. We had the Servolution, where the churches do mission groups along, and our kids that worked in the pantry, the other kids were jealous because they got so much experience. They actually were putting food in a gentleman's car. He was probably 47, 48, and he stopped to talk. He was chatting with them, explaining that he was a successful businessman, had an identity theft, had a health issue, and lost everything. And that he wanted those kids to pray with him. But he knew he would be back on his feet again. And that's the kind of things that when our children, when our next generation get an opportunity to see the vulnerability, that is very life-changing. So we always ask that you go in pairs. Right now we do 150. We can't grow our list because we don't have more volunteers to do that work that we have, especially during the summers and vacations. We depend a lot on the UTMB students, so we really ask the high schools and the junior highs in the community to really help us. So if you've got kids or grandkids, you guys drive and you let the kids do the heavy lifting up and down the stairs. When I go, I make my 23-year-old, of course it's good for him, right? It's good for him to go up those stairs. The other thing is we do have projects. Like Susan, I don't think she's here today. She helps us upstairs. We're about to do an audit. She's amazing at pulling documents for us and scanning, so I'm going to give her a call and ask her if she can come up, but we always have projects. And if you can only help us monthly, we have the big food truck, and that takes an army. On that day, there's so much need, and last week we had eggs. We don't usually get dairy. That was a big deal. We had probably 300 cars come that day. And every day in our pantry, we have 10 to 12 new families. 10 to 12 every day register with our pantry. So again, we only have, on the house side, we only have 14 as a staff. But we do these amazing volume of work with our volunteers. Other events that come up that we need your help, and I gave you one of these, it's called a rack card, and it just talks about our different services. But on the back, if you like some technology, just like how we had to survive during COVID to eat, there's a QR code, and it will take you to our website. And in our website, we've got an option for volunteers and then an option for donate. We're also 100% philanthropic. So the work that we do is all through donations. So if you feel that in your heart, that's a way that you can help us, or to volunteer, or if there's a phone number and an email. So we've given you lots of different ways to kind of call to action and help us. But events that we have coming up, it's right around the corner. It's crazy. First, November the 11th, we will have a huge family festival at St. Vincent's House highlighting our clinics. So in addition to our community partners that we do, we will have a family festival health fair. That takes about 70 volunteers for us to be able to do it and do it well. We'll have the food bank there with us, so we'll be able to distribute food. We're going to have a coat and blanket drive for our families. We did this in August, and we were able to give over 3,000 kids and families in 3 hours backpacks and clothes and shoes and hygiene supplies, new underwear, brand new things, so that these kids could have brand new things. But what was so exciting about that event is not only were we able to distribute these things, but we had our local trusted vendors. So for example, the Boy Scouts signed up 3 pages of kids for after school activities. So there were a lot of amazing partners there with good, healthy kid activities. As we know, that's what we need our kiddos to be able to do, as well as good community resources for our families. Then we get into Thanksgiving, and that's going to be here before we know it. We've already started our Thanksgiving distribution list. This year, depending on how it goes, we're going to start with 300 families. That's what we did last year. That means feeding over 1,000 people. So on the Tuesday, so the Friday and Monday before Thanksgiving, we need volunteers to help us assemble all of it, because it's a lot of work, right? We have everything that goes into a Thanksgiving meal that goes into a box. Then this year we're going to offer turkeys. But not all of our families want turkey, so we now do rotisserie chickens for those that it's just 2 or just really don't want to prepare. And this year we're going to add a ham. We're getting fancy at St. Vincent's House, but we're really trying to meet the needs of our community and be as impactful as possible. So that's an opportunity right there, either by donations or volunteer. Then at Christmas time, we do what's called the Christmas Angels, and it's a little bit different in that we asked the churches and the fellowships and the different groups to adopt the families. So what that means, and you guys did last year, right? Yes, y'all were amazing. You adopt the family, you reach out to them, you find out what the kiddos want, and then you are the one that has the communication with them and then delivers the gifts to them. I know in the past we used to buy all of these miscellaneous toys and then try to match fit it, put them in a garbage bag, march all of the families in, take a picture in front of the tree, and it just didn't seem like a real service. So what we do now is the kids don't have to know where this comes from. It gives the parents the dignity to be able to give their kids Christmas, right? Let them have that joy. I know when I do it, I include wrapping paper and I get a gift certificate because usually when I talk to the parents, they don't want anything for themselves. And if they do, it's things like blankets or stuff for their kids. So it's really, again, another way, especially during the holidays where sometimes we get so busy with the looks of what Christmas is, we forget what it's really, really about. It's about hope and service and loving and helping each other. So again, thank you for inviting me here. It's always my pleasure. Are there any questions or anything that I can answer for you? Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes. Thank you. I was afraid I was talking too long, so I didn't want to take up too much time. So we are absolutely thrilled because of our partnerships. First of all, y'all have heard of the fentanyl crisis that's going on in Galveston County, right? Fentanyl right now is Galveston County has the second highest death rate in Texas from fentanyl. And part of the reason is, and I never realized this before, is the toxicity of fentanyl is like nothing we have ever seen. So if you look at a vial of cocaine, of heroin, of other type of opioids or narcotics, it's like a third of a vial, a fourth of a vial, it just goes down. But when you look at the toxicity of fentanyl, it's crystals. It is the most toxic drug that there is made right now. And so what's happening is that a lot of people are basically making their own, right? Like I know somebody in Clear Lake that her son is 16 years old. He was having some anxiety, didn't want to make his parents anxious, so he ordered something on Facebook, took it, and it was laced with fentanyl, and he died. No idea. It's not just our people that are living out on the streets or what we see as your typical drug addict. This fentanyl is targeted for kids. It's targeted for everybody. It's made in bright pink and blue pills that look like gummy bears. So somebody can take it innocently. Somebody thinks that they're buying it from an actual real vendor. Like I said, this kid thought, well, if they sell it on Facebook, it must be true, right? So the only known savior of a fentanyl overdose is a medication that's called Narcan. Narcan is a nasal spray that when somebody is having a fentanyl overdose, and you usually know because, and I just changed purses, but I always carry it with me now, that, their lips turn blue and they're unconscious, you give them the squirt of fentanyl in their nose. You cannot hurt someone if they're not having an opioid overdose, right? It'll just give them a horrible taste in their mouth, but you cannot hurt them. And of course you call 911 immediately. So our staff was trained. We've been going to all these symposiums, and so we knew we had to do something. There's not one person in the office, and as you start talking to people more and more, there's not somebody that we don't know that overdosed from fentanyl. It's really, and I mean, somebody in front of you. It's just amazing. So what we do is at St. Vincent's House, we now have 2 Narcan dispensaries, right? I understand. I'm from Friendswood, and I know the culture there. There's a lot of embarrassment. Like some moms that may suspect that their child may be, even like pot and things are being laced with fentanyl, things that you just never know. So there's a lot of stigma to it. So what our goal is that if you need it, it's available anonymously. So we have a fentanyl dispenser in our waiting room, but we've got the first, and from Les, who works with us, who works with Outreach Ministries, he's saying that St. Vincent's House has the very first outdoor dispensary in our alley, so that you can drive by any time and pick one up. And initially, people thought, well, they're just going to take them all and sell them. I'm like, you know what? If they're selling them, they're getting it out in the streets where they need it. But that's not been the case. People have been very respectful in taking what they needed. As a matter of fact, we had a mom that was coming through the food line, and we've got a sign and instructions, and she knew what Narcan was, and she had been desperately trying to get some because she suspected her 17-year-old son might be doing some stuff, and she was really scared. She had been hearing about it. So of course we gave her one, and sure enough, the next day he had an overdose, and she was able to save his life. Yeah. So we're so blessed, again, because of our partnerships. We're supplied the Narcan through Galveston County Health Department. And then because of the population, we last year had 100,000 duplicated individuals come through our doors. You think of the population of Galveston. That's a lot of people that come through. So we're starting to talk about it. So if I encourage all the staff, I encourage volunteers, please keep the Narcan with you. You cannot hurt somebody, you can only help save a life. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, thank you so much.